A walkthrough of project number 1. Um, this is the beginning of the class, so I figured that the best way to engage in learning how to use this application is by just doing it hands-on experience. So I'm going to walk through a step by step so you can see how this project is done. Of course, I'm not covering full 100% of this. You need to write about your own results, but most of the steps that you are required to do in Tableau, I'm going to demonstrate them here. The first step is for me to get into connecting my dashboard to the source. I had already downloaded that January reactors operating that XLXX, and then I'm going to bring that in. That brings the raw data. As you can see, the data as presented has several null values and information that you might, using some other tools, clean, if you will, but the data interpreter that Tableau provides, this prep tool, allows you to do a whole lot of cleaning automatically. So Tableau is going to read your raw data and is going to clean it for you. Now, all you really need to do is check this to use the data interpreter, and that is going to do it for you in the background. As you may see here, it says cleaned with data interpreter. Now, you can undo by uncheck that. Unchecking it undo the whole process and brings you back to the raw data. But what we want to see here is the results. This window, this link right here, will take you to the results, and you should be able to review the results and perform further cleaning if it's necessary. But for this particular report, all I want you to do is to get yourself familiar with what Tableau does and how Tableau reports back to you. These keys that you see here are the ones that you should examine. As you can see here, the red indicates headers, and that will be your variables. The green indicates your observations. That means your data. It has been interpreted as values. If it's light green, you can see what that is all about and continue reading. So read this, because that's what Tableau is giving you as the reference, and is color coded for you to see what the interpretation or the preparation or the cleaning process did for you. Now, on the bottom left, you see the actual data cleaned, and now, as you can see, the vast majority of observations are right, so they're pristine. Tableau left them the way they were, and now the column are listed as red, which means those are your variables. You might take a look at the actual names of those variables to see if the names relate to the best possible variable name based on the dictionary, because you already have access to the data dictionary as well. Now pay attention to the very last column. This column is in white, which means Tableau excluded this from the analysis. So obviously, as you can see, it was just that a column indicating that that was a data point, and the header had no header, and it's just leaving it the way it was. So Tableau has already assessed that this is bogus data that means absolutely nothing for your analysis. So you're safe to go ahead and close this Excel file. Again, this Excel file is provided to you, and you can have access to it, and that's your clean data. Now, the other steps in the project are critical for the beginning of this class. One of the steps is asking you to pivot some columns, and the pivoting is no other than converting from columns to rows, and you can see why it is a good process or good step to take, as doing this will allow you to perform faster and easier analysis of your data, or aggregate your data to present it in a much better way. Now, also I wanted you to see the number of fields and the number of rows, after the data was cleaned. You see that there are 36 fields and 97 rows. Now, if when the data is clean, of course. So let me go ahead and bring back to the actual raw data, and you can see the raw data, the number of fields and the number of rows. As you clean the data, you see how many of those were actually removed. You keep the same number of fields. However, there were two observations that were not included as part of this process. As you can see this again, right? So we're looking at 36 fields, 99 rows on the raw data, but as I clean the data, now I'm getting only 97 rows, which means 97 observations, and that means two of them were not valid and were taken out. Perhaps the last column, as you might have seen, that is a part of this whole process. Now, the other steps here, one is to pivot the data. So I'm going to scroll all the way into the data that can be pivoted. As you can see here, capacity factor for 2018, capacity factor for 2017. And you can see that these figures right here are related to each of the years for each of these observations. So it makes sense to pivot this data. That's what perhaps I'm asking you to do in this first project. So I'm going to click here on 2018 and just simply scroll all the way down to 2003, which is the very last column. Then hit my shift key on my keyboard, hold it, and then click on 2003. Now that selects all of these variables. Now I can go ahead and proceed and right click on any of this under the blue area and then hit the pivot option. As you may see here, when I hit it, it creates the values for me, which is the capacity factor, if you recall that capacity factor, for each of the years. As you can see here, I am only converting columns to rows. Now, what I want you to see now is the number of rows after I pivot. I went from 24 fields, of course, from 36 fields to 24, so which means I aggregated some of them, quite a bit, 12 of them, that had capacity factors for each of these years. And of course, since I converted columns to rows, look now the number of rows that I have in this analysis. Now, these are simply names. These are capacity factor values. Now, what he wants me to do next is to split this, in other words, to get my year out of this name. So all I need to do really is to split the data. When I do that, Tableau is going to automatically read my year and then bring it out as a separate variable. Now, that is a year. It is a calculation, as you may see here. Why? Because it's being splitted as part of the process. Now, what I like to do, instead of naming it split one, I'm going to rename this and then add the number, the label year, so I can spat it out when I use my analysis. Now I have names, values, and year, and those are the very last three columns that I want to use for my next analysis. Now, the other steps that I want you to take a look at is the data types. Now you can see here the data types are nicely provided to you with the icons. You can see here this is a string, right? When I'm right on top of it, when you click on it, you can see that it reads the string, which is your default. It seems that it's a string, it's a name. Now you keep on checking. This is a number, of course, an integer right here, right? So you can say this data type is all right. So you can continue checking by looking at the data, and the data should tell you whether you're using the right data type or not. So as I continue, usually, in most cases, dates are the ones that are going to be very emerging as badly formatted. So take a look at the dates, because the dates are very powerful when it comes to using dates in Tableau, conducting analysis over time, timelines, etc. So dates are going to be critical for you to handle. And as we move forward, I'm going to try to point out steps so you can work on it. For now, I just want you to spat out a particular column that doesn't have the right data type on. As you may see here, the renewed operating license is a year, right? Is right here, which means that's a calendar. Should be a calendar as the previous one or the one that is next to it, but happens that it is by default using the string. So it should not. So I'm going to use the default date. It doesn't have a time on it. I don't want to use the time. So I'm going to use just the generic date data type on it. As you may see, I just changed it. By simply doing it that way, we might go all the way here to the field's name, but that would be a little more cumbersome. It's probably easier if you just look at the column name and then look at the data, and that should allow you to right then immediately convert your data type. Now, the next step here is to go into sheet 1, right? You can also rename this sheet by right-clicking on it, and whatever the name of the process is, for now is not required. I'm going to leave it as sheet 1. And then what he's asking us to do is to move the field values. You see him right here, pivot field values. Move that to the rows is what the instructions say. And it creates my pivot field values all the way to the top. Of course, it gives me the very low all the way to the very high, but it doesn't give me anything else. As you may see, the actual default, the aggregation is to sum them up. So, but my instructions is asking you to change that measure type to average. So you just go to the measure by right-clicking on here, or by just simply clicking on the menu. It will give you this option to change the measure from sum to average. Now by that, as you can see, is being changed. Now it indicates that it's an average. The other one is to move the years. As you can see them here, that's my pivot field name year. So I'm going to move that to my column, and that creates a nicely bar chart showing me the average pivot field values by year. So I can see what's going on 2003, I can see what's going on 2018, and so on. I can spot out the highest, but I can sort this information from highest to lowest or from lowest to highest. We're not going to do that just yet. All I want us to do during project number 1 is to be able to create this simple chart and read it. So obviously you can see here a lot, we can say and give a lot of information. What the last step in the process is to move the reactor and containment, which is an information here, reactor and containment, to the color. So I'm going to color each of the years. When you do that, you can see the reactor and containment, and the actual reactor and containment categories, you see them there. Now, what each of this means, look into the data dictionary and it's going to tell you. Now, this is a filter, a very nice filter that will allow me to see, click on it, right? By just clicking on it, it will allow me to see the behavior of each of these reactor and containments. When I click outside, it brings them all up. Now, this is the end of project 1, guys. I hope this video helps you, and I look forward to continue working with you.